Welcome to the Sunny Street Podcast, where we talk about all things well-being with curiosity, love, and a few giggles to boot. Today's guest is yoga teacher, nutrition coach, and performing artist Kim Hamilton. Kim, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for being here today. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Thank you for having me.
This will be fun. So let's start off the way we typically start out. I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit about you.
Okay. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up as a dancer. I started dance classes when I was 3 years old.
Aww.
Ballet, and then I did tap and jazz. So I think dance was really the catalyst that sort of sparked this interest in the mind-body connection at a very young age. But yeah, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, went to college, Kennesaw State University, so I didn't travel that far. I was a theater and performance studies major, psychology minor. And then after college, I took some odd jobs while I was pursuing theater and performing arts. That's very unstable, but it's a lot of fun. I love the art form. I love storytelling. And then I got some corporate jobs, and I wasn't super passionate about the corporate jobs. They stressed me out a lot. So I started getting into yoga for my own stress management. To learn how to do breathing practices and movements that help me manage my own stress in my own life. So I was marketing manager for this company, and hiring and firing people, training people, running a lot was really stressful. So that's sort of what sparked my interest in yoga. And then I just fell in love with the process and how it's a holistic approach to health and wellness. I was actually born with really, really bad asthma as well. So I was in and out of the hospital a lot when I was a child. I had some scary moments throughout my whole adolescence. I had to get hooked up to these breathing treatments in school. Like I couldn't run with all the kids. I could dance, but I couldn't do heavy cardiovascular activities, or I would have asthma attacks a lot. And then even in my teenage years, I was still using like maintenance inhalers and rescue inhalers. So that's something that really sparked my interest in health and wellness. So after I got my yoga certification, I got my nutrition certification, just so I could learn more about nutrition and how much diet affects the human body. And that brings me a little to where I am today. So, now I teach yoga for many different companies. And I'm also sort of running my own now. I do nutrition consulting. And then I also make movies when I can and do the performing arts stuff still. So I'm very happy that I'm not working a corporate job that I don't really like, that stresses me out anymore.
Yeah, I hear that. I just took a 6-month sabbatical in celebration of my 50th birthday. So I was telling somebody the other day.
Birthday!
Thank you. I was telling a friend the other day, he said, "How's it going?" And I said, I had no idea how much space this would open up in my brain, but you have to get used to it, right? There's so much of a go element to that. It's difficult to change gears.
Yeah. And I also think like the average American is programmed to be constantly working, it seems like there's this misconception that gets spread around in American society that our worth is based on how productive we are or how much money we're making. And I don't know how healthy that is. I don't think that's very healthy.
Right.
So I think when you're in a corporate environment, not to say all corporations are evil or anything like that. Some corporate jobs are wonderful. I know some people love their corporate jobs, and that's great. But I do think being in that environment can sort of condition you to constantly be working and constantly thinking you have to be productive all day, every day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Anyway,
and that's the mental side of it.
Good for you for taking up break.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So how does or did your yoga and wellness practices and all that you've learned contribute to your asthma and the improvement of that condition?
I wouldn't say that it's hard to tell. Like it's hard to tell exactly what helped my asthma condition improve, but I'd like to think adapting my diet and eating an anti-inflammatory diet and doing certain breathing techniques that help calm your nervous system, basically doing lifestyle changes that reduce inflammation. I would like to believe that that's something that helped heal my asthma issues growing up.
But whatever it is, that integrated approach is working.
Yeah, I haven't had any asthma issues probably in like the last 15 years. And I
It's
don't
fantastic.
take any maintenance inhalers. I don't take any rescue inhalers. The only time I ever feel any shortness of breath is like if I if I'm around like certain animals and I'm having like a weird allergic reaction. And
Yeah,
then I just leave and I feel better. So
that's good.
as far as exercise, I can do a lot now. I can run, I can do all kinds of exercise. I never have any asthma issues. So,
And part of that full hat rack of yours includes a lot of physical stuff, both the yoga and the dancing, which I know you're still doing as well, right?
yeah. So, when I was a teenager, I was taking a lot of ballet, tap, jazz, lots of different dance classes. And then throughout high school and college, I was still doing dancing and musical theater, things like that. And to this day, I do get paid to do random dance gigs, like
Mm.
do like Hawaiian dance. But I wouldn't say I'm pursuing dance as like a big part of my career. I'm mostly focused on performing arts as acting and filmmaking. And sometimes there is an element of dance in that, but I wouldn't say dance is my focus. But it's still there. I still love to dance. Like I love it's to me it's a way of sort of releasing stress and freeing the body and connecting to the mind as well, just like yoga.
Hmm.
And whenever I sort of plan yoga classes, I kind of think of it like a dance in a way. Like your breath is sort of the music, and you're moving to the
Mm.
rhythm of your breath. So when you think of vinyasa yoga like that, it's very much like a dance, moving to the rhythm of your breath. So whenever I plan yoga sequences for students, I do sometimes think of it like choreographing a dance.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. That makes total sense. And it's one thing we all try to tell people about on the mat. We try to make clear that it's the breath and the movement combined. And that's part of yoga. It's not just the movement, it's that choreography. I like the way you put that. I think that's a really cool way to describe it.
whenever I'm planning a class, I think about you want to make sure you're spending an equal amount of time on both sides. Like if you're doing a sun series, for instance, and you're practicing three movements in that sun series, like warrior one, warrior two, warrior three, for example, you want to make sure you're spending an equal amount of time on the other side so you're balanced. And so that has to do with timing as well, which is very much like a dance. So in that regard, I feel like all my dance background does help me be a better yoga instructor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear more about the acting and filmmaking. So when we get to the question of what are you passionate about, I'd love to hear more about that too. But I do want to say, I think what you have here is your upbringing, your experiences create a very fertile soil for getting into well-being. So I'd love
Mm-hmm.
to understand what that journey was like, how you decided to get into things like nutrition and yoga,
Mm-hmm.
what made that decision come to play.
So I think growing up as a very young dancer was part of it because I started developing an appreciation for the mind body connection as a young ballet dancer. And my father is a psychotherapist. He counsels people, but he also teaches meditation, Tai Chi. And so he exposed me to meditation and mindfulness practices at a very young age. When I was 10 years old is the first time I tried meditation. So I
Amazing.
think, yeah, I think having a father that's that was into mindfulness practices and meditation really sparked my interest in practices like yoga and mindful movement at a very, very young age. But it wasn't until I graduated college and I got that corporate job.
Hmm.
And I actually, during that job, I was very stressed, and I was so stressed, in fact, that I got shingles
Oh,
on.
wow.
Yeah. And I remember going to the doctor and the doctor saying, usually people your age, I was in my, early mid 20s, usually people your age don't get shingles unless they've experienced some highly stressful or traumatic situation. And I knew that my corporate job was causing me stress because I was like managing this company, and I had a lot of responsibilities. And I didn't like having to fire people.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really did. I don't like telling people what to do very much. It's not my favorite thing. Having like the entire company on my shoulders and it was a sales job essentially. So
Mm.
having quota and things like that, lots of pressure to sell, sell, sell. So I knew that I was stressed, but I didn't realize exactly how stressed I was until I got shingles. And, that's just proof that the mind body connection is very powerful.
Yep.
And so if you're mentally stressed, it manifests physically. So that was one thing that sort of sparked my interest in diving deeper into how the mind body connection works and how much nutrition affects that as well. And then just growing up, with asthma, it's kind of a funny story if you think about it, because I remember when I was working, I worked a few different corporate jobs, but the main corporate job that I worked for a couple years that was stressing me the most during that job, I remember I went a week and I just couldn't find time to go to the doctor to buy a maintenance inhaler.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I couldn't find the time to buy one. And because of that, I thought, you know what? I am going to try to see how I do without this maintenance inhaler and with taking vitamin D, because I was reading studies about how asthma can be related to a vitamin D deficiency and inflammation. So I started eating a very anti-inflammatory diet, taking vitamin D, and then I started trying to prioritize sleep and practicing stress reducing techniques, like yogic breathing and things like that.
Yeah.
And so for the first week, I would say my lungs were definitely adapting to not having a maintenance inhaler. I've been taking my entire life something like that. And so for the first week, I definitely felt kind of that struggle. But I started sort of consciously controlling my breath because, asthma is a very scary thing. Like
Mm.
our breath is our life force. And when you're in a position where you're struggling to breathe, you feel like you don't have control of your breath. But I
Right.
started sort of telling myself, I can control my breath. I can. And I started focusing on just taking conscious, slow, deep breaths and using a mantra. I can control this to an extent. I trust that I can control this. And so just the art of practicing mindful conscious breathing was huge, and just believing that I could overcome asthma. So because I think the psychology around having an asthma attack just makes it even worse, because if you start struggling to breathe and then you start stressing because you can't breathe, that's only going to make it worse, right? And
Absolutely. Yep.
I think when I was a little kid, and I had asthma attacks all the time, I'd have to get rushed to the hospital because I was so young. I don't think I had that mechanism in me yet. But then
Right.
in my 20s, I feel like, I've developed more of self-awareness, self-control. And so yeah, yogic breathing definitely helped, I think. And then just yeah, just sort of trusting my body's natural ability to do its thing and eat an anti-inflammatory diet, take the vitamin D. And then there's no way to tell exactly what it was that helped me overcome asthma, but it's probably a combination of a lot of those things. And yeah, and then the more I started researching about diet and nutrition, the more I became fascinated with how what we eat affects us
Yeah.
physically, mentally, and emotionally. And then so I decided I got my 200-hour yoga certification, and then I got a nutrition certification so I could give some of my students nutrition guidance as well, because nutrition is a huge part of health and wellness. That was a very long answer to your question.
No, it was beautiful. And I have to agree with you. I mean, if I go back soon and study something, I definitely want to study nutrition. It's
Mhm.
just mind blowing. And even to the degree I was talking with someone the other day, I just got back from Europe from vacation, and the what I eat there affects me differently than what I eat here.
Oh yeah, I'm sure the quality of the food's probably much different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's
did you notice when you were in Europe, did you notice you like after you ate, did you feel like you had more energy, or did you feel like more alert, better? Did you feel worse? Did you
I felt
like how?
alert, and what I always find when I go and come back is that I feel lighter if I eat store-bought bread here, for example. I feel like, with gluten, regular wheat bread, I feel like I have a rock in my gut for a while. But there, I don't have that feeling. Uh,
Oh, interesting.
when I drink wine in Europe, I can drink, I'm not a big wine drinker anyway, but if I have 2 glasses of wine, it affects me less than if I have 1 glass of wine here.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it comes down to a lot, right? It's the farming,
Yeah.
and I think they are much stricter on um,
Regulations.
regulation and GMO. That's the acronym I was looking for. Genetically
Yeah.
modified ingredients, things like that. So
Yeah.
it does have a huge impact, and it's something that we really don't teach or talk about much in this country. And it's so important. So I'm with
Yeah,
you.
that's so interesting. I would love to go to Europe and try things that I eat here and see how it affects me differently, because I've cut out for myself all wheat, all dairy, all gluten.
Wow.
But I wonder if I were to eat, something along those lines in Europe, I wonder if that would be less taxing on my digestive system because of the way it's processed and the way it's grown. I don't know, but that's very interesting. I'm not surprised that you were affected differently by the food in Europe.
Before we leave the topic of nutrition, would you
Hmm.
be comfortable talking about your recent digestive journey?
Oh yes, sure. For the past like 15 years, I like to think I was eating really healthy. And, again, I cut out wheat, gluten, dairy, and I never eat high fructose corn syrup. If
Right. Yep.
I have any sugar at all, it's from a more natural organic source like the raw turbinado sugar or something like maple, honey,
Hmm.
agave, something like that. But I hardly ever have any sugar, period. But if I do, it's definitely not high fructose corn syrup.
Right
So
on.
I eat, a lot of produce, a lot of, and I try to get organic as much as I can. I don't eat a lot of meat. And if I do, I try to get the organic. I'm very selective about the type of meat I eat. And anyway, my point is, I thought I was eating really healthy. And, my lifestyle still is stressful. Like as a performing artist, the audition process can be really stressful. Taking acting classes where you're having to play characters that have experienced trauma, our imagination, like this goes back to the mind body connection. Like as an actor, if you're imagining yourself experiencing trauma, our nervous system will react as if we really are experiencing trauma. So that's how powerful the mind body connection is. And our imaginations, if we're imagining and we're really committed to the technique of acting, the craft, I've had to imagine that I'm on the brink of death a lot. I've had to
Mm.
imagine my parent died. I had to imagine someone's attacking me. I had to imagine all kinds of things. And get to a point where I am, crying and feeling these emotions that can be very taxing on my nervous system.
Sure.
So, in a nutshell, just to explain how the art of acting can cause stress in the body. And I was actually involved with this play that I produced where I was playing somebody who was dealing with death and dealing with cancer. And so it was heavy, heavy, dark stuff. So I don't know if all of that had something to do with the reaction in my body. It might have. But long story short, I started developing these weird digestive issues, and I didn't know why. I mean, I would eat what I thought was like a really healthy meal, and then I would drink kombucha, or I would drink something with probiotics, thinking, oh,
Uh-huh.
you can't have too many probiotics. So I don't know if it was the combination of just consuming too many probiotics, or if it was just stress from like some jobs I worked or whatever it was. But I realized I was like feeling nauseated and sick to my stomach. And then I was like burping all the time.
Hmm.
And I didn't know why. Like, why am I burping? I'm eating like the healthiest food. So it took a really long time. I saw so many different doctors and did so many different tests until I finally realized what it was. And it was SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The number one cause of SIBO is stress. So
Hmm.
it may have just been that my nervous system was stressed from different stage performances, all that acting work, the classes, auditions, all of that. Or it may have been that I was just consuming too many probiotics. Or it may have just been that I've been eating too many vegetables that are too high in FODMAPs. So anyway,
So for our listening audience not familiar with that acronym, what is a FODMAP?
so a FODMAP is basically something that's released by certain carbohydrates. I'm not very good at explaining exactly what a FODMAP is. It's a certain type of bacteria. And if you have too much of it in your small intestine, then that creates an imbalance in your microbiome. And your microbiome is so delicate that if it becomes remotely imbalanced at all, it can take a long time to get the microbiome back to balance. So
Yeah.
my I have a great doctor who's, a trained medical doctor, but also trained in the holistic nutrition side of things. So she was
Ooh.
kind of very well-rounded perspective on this. And I will say I guess it's okay to talk about this because I'm not like bashing any companies or anything, but
Yeah.
I was prescribed certain medication, and that medication made me feel so much worse, so
Wow.
much worse. But I was following the doctor's orders.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I took the naturopathic route when I started feeling better. I stopped taking
Mm.
medication because what happens with SIBO is I was taking acid reducers because that basically acid reducers can keep you from like burping and stuff.
Yeah.
But SIBO is often caused by too little acid in the
Right.
gut. So I was taking, I would wake up and feel okay for a little while, and then I'd eat, and then I would start. And I was also doing a lot of live comedy shows. So I don't know if it was just stress. Stress was probably part of it, but I would start burping and feeling nauseated, and then I would take an antacid. And then it would
Hmm.
suppress the symptoms, but that probably was making the whole SIBO issue way worse because if you don't have enough acid in your stomach, that's what causes SIBO. Anyway, so I stopped taking antacids. I stopped taking that medicine that was prescribed to me.
Hmm.
And I just started doing more of a naturopathic route. I did take some herbal antibiotics for a few weeks and then I stopped that. And then I was just eating a low FODMAP diet. And anytime I would feel kind of a little nauseated or sick or like burping every 2 seconds,
Yeah.
I would take a ginger shot, and that would always help digestive enzymes and a certain type of probiotic, megaspore probiotics, if you're curious. So I was taking a certain type of probiotic because you can have too many. I was taking all these probiotics, but probiotics are, they're healthy bacteria, but they're designed to increase good bacteria. But if there's like a certain type of bacteria in your small intestine, probiotics can actually make SIBO worse,
Yeah.
which I didn't know until, I had this issue.
Sure.
But anyway, having this issue, it just sparked even more curiosity about like diet and nutrition. And also, I definitely use yogic breathing a lot because I was doing all these live comedy shows, and right before I would go on stage, I would start feeling like nauseated. I would start burping, sometimes, not always. Yogic breathing would help. Or even just before I would teach a class sometimes, especially if it was like a new class where it was like new students. It's natural to get a little nervous, like if you're
Oh
starting a
yeah.
new class. But I definitely could tell a correlation between stress and SIBO. Anyway, I'm pretty much over it now. Like SIBO is one of those things that likes to recur, but I know how to manage my stress and I know how to fight it, know how to manage it at least. So on occasion, I'll notice it recurring a little bit, but I can manage it. Because for 6 months or so, I didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't know why I was dealing with it. And it was really stressful. So now it's like I'm not stressed about it just because I identified what the problem was and I know how to manage it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that story because there are so many little nuggets in there that are learning experiences for people, right?
Hmm.
Probiotics, it's a good thing, but all things in moderation, like Oscar Wilde said. I think it was Oscar Wilde, I'm not sure. But you can have too much of a good thing with that, and it has to be
Yeah.
the right stuff. This
Yeah.
whole what you mentioned earlier about the whole integrative nature of everything, diet,
Hmm.
stress, activity, mental stress,
Hmm.
all of that coming together. And also that idea of finding your own path, right? I think a lot of us doing these podcasts have had similar experiences where we've gone to one doctor, one, allopathic traditional doctor for something and ended up going, yeah, I'm not too sure about that. You walk out script in hand going, yeah, I don't know. And
Yeah.
you keep looking into it and you find something that is a root cause conversation that you really want to be having. So,
Yes, the root cause, because my symptoms could have been diagnosed as like IBS or something like that, but all that is just like symptoms. But I was determined to figure out what the root cause. So SIBO is basically the root cause of those unpleasant digestive issues that people experience, like
yeah.
acid reflux, incessant burping. Some people get like really bad diarrhea. um,
Wow.
so all of those are symptoms of something, but to really get down to the root cause, and SIBO is kind of a relatively new thing that we're all still learning about, and it's a very delicate thing. And anything involved with the gut is a very, very delicate thing, and it's hard to diagnose. So it's not like I was like
Yeah.
mad at those medical doctors for like they were just doing the best they could with the
Oh,
information
sure.
I had. But I'm just so grateful at this point and so relieved I figured out what was going on. Because I mean, I did so much testing and they couldn't identify what it was. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just such a relief to know that, okay, this is a problem that I can manage. It does get frustrating that it's one of those things that it may never go away completely, but I'll have like several months where I'll feel fine, and then it'll kind of like something will happen, or sometimes I'll have like a few weeks and feel fine, and then I'll start feeling those sort of symptoms again. But it's not like, every other day like it used to be. Like for about a year, every other day
Ugh.
I would start feeling nauseated and burping and not knowing why. So
Wow.
so yeah, it's an interesting topic, and I just encourage, if anyone is listening to this, if you're dealing with any type of digestive issue, maybe just ask your doctor about SIBO. There's different ways to test for it, which is interesting. I did the breath test, and then there's also like methane
Hmm.
dominant SIBO and hydrogen dominant SIBO. So
Huh.
hydrogen dominant SIBO is treated differently than methane dominant SIBO. So I was like hydrogen dominant. So what worked for me might not work for someone who's methane dominant. And that's the other thing that I keep this pattern I keep realizing anytime I learn about a new quote unquote disease or disorder or whatever, it's everybody's so unique. So you can't make generalizations and treat everyone the same,
Right.
because everyone's body is so unique. I mean, some people have weird food sensitivities that others don't have. Some people have allergies. Some people, you can't say, okay, everybody that has this digestive issue, we're just going to prescribe this medication. And I do think the healthcare system has some flaws, but we've definitely made more improvements. So, I mean, I'm not like against medicine or anything like that.
No,
I
not at all.
take.
No. It's just that sometimes you have to have multiple conversations in
Yeah.
different ways to find out
Yeah.
exactly what it is. Because you're right, SIBO is just, it's not a common thing, right? But even back to what you were saying around the burping and the heartburn and stuff like that, I think that's a good example as well, a good note for our listeners. How common is heartburn? And
Yeah.
that's part of what I learned in functional medicine coach training is that sometimes you get the heartburn because like you're saying, your digestive fire isn't strong enough and you've got that buildup of food that's just kind of stuck in there and coming in. So what's the root cause of that? Yeah, a Tums is going to help take away the burn, but how do you get to the root cause of that, whatever that is?
Yeah. And it's amazing how much breath work can help because, as you know, doing certain breathing techniques can activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which
Hmm.
is our rest and digest mode. So, the more time throughout your day you can practice yogic breathing, ujjayi breath, or just cleansing breaths, lengthening your exhales, that alone is just almost, I feel like it's almost like a superpower. Like it's
Absolutely.
it's something we can easily take for granted. Like I don't take breathing for granted just because I grew up struggling to breathe for most of my childhood and adolescence. But I mean, it is such a thing that is easy to take for granted. But it's a tool that we have at our disposal, and it's a free tool.
Yeah.
Like learning how to consciously control our breath, it's free. It doesn't cost a bunch of money like medicines and all this stuff. Like it's such a simple yet such a powerful tool that I'm just so grateful that I know how to use it when I'm dealing with digestive issues or any type of issue like that. So
I love that you said that. Gratitude for the breath, right? And to
mhm.
have an experience like that really shows you that it's special to have that tool. My son was a micro preemie and he was on a ventilator for the first several weeks of his life. And now sometimes I'll just go into his room and just watch him breathe. Just
No.
the phenomenal nature of just that, of the brain knowing what to do. And thank God he's totally healthy now. So, and he's taller than I am, and he's got these big lungs. It was just that almost miraculous nature of just having that ability, that breathing ability. So if you're listening out there, take a deep breath and let it out nice
Yeah.
and slow.
And enjoy that sweet sensation of slow, deep breathing. It's just amazing how we can reset our nervous system by taking slow, deep breaths. Um, and we feel it as soon as you take a deep breath. Anyone out there, just take a deep breath and then notice how you're feeling. You feel a subtle shift already. So it's just something to remind yourself of if you're dealing with stress in your life, if you're having a hard time sleeping, if you're having a hard time processing trauma, processing anything, our breath is always there as a tool. So just
Right
be
on,
grateful.
right on, right on. To switch gears just a little bit, tell us
Yeah.
a few things that you are passionate about right now.
So I'm really passionate about teaching yoga. I love all the companies I work for. And now I'm kind of running my own little company, doing private sessions one on one. I love teaching one on one just because going back to what I was saying previously, everyone has different needs, everyone has different goals. And there's so many different styles of yoga that can align with very different goals depending on where you're at in your life and what you need. mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. So that's why I love doing private one-on-one sessions, because I can customize the class based on the student's individual needs. For instance, if you're overcoming an injury, or you just want to gain flexibility, or maybe you actually want to build some strength and lose some fat, those are very different things. So I would change up the type of yoga, the style of yoga. And as you know, there's dozens and dozens of styles of yoga. So I love teaching various different styles for strength, for fat burning, for mindfulness, for stress relief, for flexibility, hormonal regulation, balance, I mean, the list goes on and on about the health benefits of yoga. So it's something I'm very, very passionate about. And then I love nutrition coaching. I work one-on-one, and I will offer nutrition consultations as well. And then in addition to that, I'm very passionate about telling stories that touch lives in a positive way. I've been studying the craft of acting and my whole life. I've performed in a lot of plays, but in the last 10 years or so, I've really focused on writing my own short films. And I just wrote a feature film with the help of a couple other people. We wrote it together.
Oh,
And
cool.
this feature film is something I'm very, very passionate about, because it's a story that I believe will touch people in a positive way. It's thought provoking, and hopefully it's inspiring. So that's something I'm really passionate about. As an actor and as a storyteller, I just want to tell stories that are uplifting and inspiring in some way. And comedy is one of my favorite genres, just because laughter releases endorphins, releases stress. Laughter literally
Hmm.
boosts your mood and frees people of concern. And so I love making people laugh. So comedy is one of my favorite genres, and there is a little comedy in this feature film, but it's there's a lot of deep themes about science and spirituality converging, and it's about a relationship, which everyone can relate to, relationships. But yeah, so I'm just really passionate about continuing to make movies and create art that can benefit our lives. So yeah.
I love that. So follow-up question on the feature film. And I think this is kind of getting into what's next a little bit, but what happens next with that? And do you envision yourself doing more screenwriting, I don't know, directing, producing things like that in addition to acting?
Yes, I mean, I've really enjoyed, because as an actor, you're basically helping to tell someone else's story. And I get really excited about acting when I love the story, when I love the writing, when I think this is a story that's going to help people in some way. So when you're actually writing and producing, it's your own story. And I've written and produced a bunch of short films, but this is the first feature. So I'm really excited about that. And yes, I definitely see some more writing, producing in my future, as well as acting. And I also love teaching acting. I teach acting classes at this great little studio, and I work with children dealing with autism.
Hmm.
And just taking acting classes, if you're struggling with some type of autism, it's really helpful for understanding and learning about human emotion. So I love teaching children, but especially children that are challenged in that way, because the more you can understand human emotion, even if you don't become a successful actor, you can still develop that social skill and that ability to process emotion. So I
Yeah.
love teaching kids acting, and I also teach kids ballet now, which I really love, because that was what I did when I was a little one. So I love being able to give back and kind of give what was given to me. So I teach kids ballet, and I love teaching kids yoga too. Kids yoga is so fun. It's very like different than teaching adults. When you can learn these skills at a very young age, I think they can benefit you no matter what profession you go into.
Oh, it's so true. That's why it's just what a gift to have in your early life all that exposure to, I mean, being 10 years old. And I think meditation should be offered in every public school everywhere all the
Mm-hmm.
time. It just
Yeah.
this makes so much sense. But Tai Chi and all of those other modalities, to have that so ingrained in you from an early age, it colors your life. It must color your life in just a wonderful way. That's such a gift.
Yeah, and also learning about like taking acting classes. I started my first acting class when I was 10 as well. And that was a way for me to express emotion
Mm.
in a creative way. And I think that was just as valuable of a skill as learning about meditation and everything else that I was exposed to, like taking acting classes and dance classes, in addition to like learning about the meditation and Tai Chi and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And so that's why I like teaching all those things to kids now. It's really rewarding too, like to see like really young children learn and grow. And teaching kids can be hard and stressful because when kids are really young, it's hard to get them to focus and listen, but that's what
Oh
makes it
yeah.
so much more rewarding when they actually get it. When you actually see things clicking, when you see progress, it makes it so much more rewarding because it's so much more challenging in different ways than teaching adults. Yeah.
Kudos to you for doing that kind of yoga, kids yoga. Not every person has that wiring to be able to do that successfully. I can teach yoga to my own child, and when he was 4 or 5, yes, I could have taught yoga to him, but only only him I would have been comfortable with. So hats off to you for that. Are you ready, Kim Hamilton, for the lightning round?
Oh gosh. What do I need to get ready for? How do I get ready for that?
Deep breath, long exhale.
Here we go.
All right. These
Okay.
are easy questions, right? Spur of the moment, top of your head. First question. What is your current favorite book or favorite movie? Current favorite. It's a hard one for an actor. I'm sorry.
Favorite movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Ooh, haven't seen it yet. It's on my list. I have to go see that. And why?
Favorite book. Uh so a lot of those themes are actually in the feature film I wrote, which I wrote way before that came out, but
Oh,
because it's very thought provoking yet touching. It's dark, but it's a little more hopeful than dark. It's sort of like a dark comedy action. It's got everything. It's got comedy, it's got action. It features like powerful women. It's got a beautiful message to it. So I just love the beautiful message. I'm a
cool.
sucker for those types of movies. Favorite book is Beauty, the Invisible Embrace by John O'Donohue. Everything he writes is very poetic and just life affirming. It's a reminder of why we live and what matters in life, uh, to experience what's beautiful. My words will not do it justice, but it's a wonderful book. I actually read excerpts from it sometimes when I'm teaching classes.
My bookshelf is growing so much with these podcasts. I haven't heard of that one. Now I really, really want to read it. So thank you.
Highly recommend it. Yeah.
Next question. What is the current song or the latest song that was stuck in your head?
I don't have any songs stuck in my head right now, but I will say the song that was stuck in my head yesterday was from the Barbie movie. And it was the I'm just Ken. Anywhere else I'd be a 10. It's Ken's theme song.
I've heard
It's a
about this song. I haven't heard it yet.
it's a funny satire. It's very divisive. I think people love the movie or hate the movie, but I liked it. I recommend it. It's a very funny film. Ryan Gosling is hilarious in that movie. And so I think because he was so funny, I think that's why I had that song stuck in my head.
All right. Next question. We've talked a lot about food today, and this is the final lightning round question. So, all right, we're hungry. It's almost supper time now, and we're going out to eat. and it's your choice tonight. So we're going to get in our little car and we're going to go to dinner. Where are we going to go and what are we going to eat?
We are going to go to a farm to table restaurant and
Nice.
whatever restaurant is still open at this time. And we're going to get some farm to table food that's non-dairy, non-gluten, and low sugar or no sugar.
I love it.
Sprig is one of those restaurants that I like to go to in Atlanta. I like Sprig. A lot of the foods like from like a local garden and farm to table.
Mm,
Or I would say sushi. I like sushi, and you can make sushi healthy, or you can make it not so healthy.
right.
But yeah, sushi is one of my favorite foods.
That's the second time that sushi has hit the board here in the podcast. You and
Uh,
Hamad both had sushi on your list, which is great. And I'm there with you. I am right there with you. Yeah, the healthy sushi. I don't leave out the cream cheese. I don't need the
yeah.
fancy sauces. Just give me a spicy yellowtail roll and I'm a happy bunny.
Yeah, what I love to do sometimes with clients is like I'll ask them what are the things they really enjoy eating, because there's nothing wrong with food being a pleasurable experience. Like I tend to think of food as medicine and food as nourishment, but for people who just enjoy the experience, I don't want to take that away from anyone. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll ask, okay, what are your favorite foods to eat? And what I'll do is I will introduce suggestions of how to make the food just a little healthier. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
show recipes like if you like spaghetti and meatballs, okay, how can we make just a healthier version of spaghetti and meatballs? If you like pizza, traditionally mostly unhealthy, but there are ways of making pizza just a little healthier. So
Yeah,
and even something like sushi could be really unhealthy or it could be very healthy depending on how you prepare it.
that's
So
right. Exactly. I,
yeah.
I, I love that. And I'm a person who loves to eat. So coming up with a healthy version of something that is satisfying on the palate, fills your belly, rich tastes, right? And you can do it. And then as you start to get used to it, have you found that some of your clients they experience a change in their palates? So what they found good when,
Yes.
right? It's too rich,
Yes.
it's too sweet, it's too creamy.
Yeah, your body craves what it's used to. So, when you start eating healthier, when you start eating more raw produce, then you start developing a taste for it. And healthy food does start to taste better and better. And then when you go out to eat and you realize, oh my gosh, this has way too much salt, way too much sugar, way too rich. It's not, you don't even like all the
Right.
unhealthy stuff even anymore. But it's, you don't want to shock someone's system either.
No.
So it's always good to make slow, gradual changes over time instead of making a drastic change right away.
Oh, totally agree. Totally agree.
That's something else. You asked me what I'm passionate about, like teaching dance, teaching acting, teaching yoga, making movies. I also am very passionate about coming up with healthy recipes. To me, it's a lot of fun when I can introduce a healthy recipe and I can show someone how you can still enjoy your food and make it healthy. Like it lights me up inside. Like it's something I'm very passionate about.
Do you share these recipes anywhere?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel online. It's just Yoga Flow with Kim. I started it during the pandemic when a lot of my corporate classes got canceled
Mhm.
and a lot of my other studio classes got canceled. And so I thought, well, I'm going to start a YouTube channel while I'm quarantined. And so I started this YouTube channel. There's some yoga videos on there. There's meditations, there's breath work, and there's some healthy recipes. There's not as many as I would like to have, but my goal is to start creating more time to share more healthy recipes. There's a whole playlist of healthy recipes. Yes, yes. So if you go on
Awesome.
Yoga Flow with Kim, there's some videos where I share some healthy recipes.
Fabulous. Noted. And my final question for you is what does well-being mean to you?
That's a great question. I would say if I had to condense it down to in the most simple way, I would say mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy. How do you define that? So happy, that's the emotional healthiness. Or actually, I wouldn't even say just because you're not happy doesn't mean you're not emotionally healthy. Being aware, I would say mindfully aware of your emotions.
Mhm.
I think it comes down to mindfulness. That's what I would say. Mindful choices. So making mindful, conscious food choices, the way you move, the way you exercise, being mindful about the way you move, and then being mindful about the way you interact with other people. Having health, that goes into healthy relationships, that goes into the emotional healthy part. So mindfully interacting with people, communicating in a healthy way, and being mindful of your own thoughts, mindful of your own behavior. So I think it boils down to mindfulness when it comes to well-being.
Got it. Makes sense to
if
me. Makes sense
I
to
could
me.
if I could condense it, it's hard to condense it.
But that's a great way. I mean, it's simple and it's meaningful and it touches all the things that we talked about today.
Yeah.
I love it. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we adjourn for the day?
Well, I just want to express my gratitude to you, Stacy, and for all that you do. I think you're wonderful, and the way you manage your life is something I really admire. You're a mom, you're a teacher, you're managing your own businesses. Like I just your overall presence is just a joy to be around, and just the fact that you are doing what you're doing and you created this podcast, it's a wonderful thing. So that would be the last thing I want to express is my gratitude towards knowing you and working together and just you being you. So thank you.
Kind of you. Thank you. And back at you. I'm really, really glad we got together almost, can you believe it? 3 years ago now.
I know. I was thinking that. How long did we meet? Oh, we met 3 years ago. When long? How
Yeah.
long? Long introduced us.
Yeah. Long if you're
Um,
listening. Thanks again.
yeah, it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but yeah,
Yeah, I opened in November. No, I
I
signed
think
a lease in
so.
November of 20, and I think we first met around November, December of 2020. So yeah,
Yeah,
time flies when you're having fun.
that's right.
Well, Kim, thank you so much again for this. Really appreciate it, and I think this will really help a lot of folks. So thanks again.